Greetings, citizens. Hey you beautiful creepy human being you, and welcome to today's true crime episode. I am so happy that you are here. I'm so happy that somehow in all of this that we're forced to deal with on the day-to-day, today you and I were able to find each other on this crazy little planet that we call home. My name is Brittany or Bratterstein, whichever you prefer, and today we're going to be discussing the murder of 24-year-old Felicia Johnson at the hands of a budding serial killer. A very dangerous man who is currently on the run, and nobody is talking about it. But before we get started, if you have not yet had the pleasure, please make sure to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell. I put out a new video every single week, sometimes 2 a week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you specifically you, but I can only do that if you join the Brat Pack and become one of us. Now, before we get into the details of today's case, I first need to say a big thank you to the sponsor of today's video, and that is Aura. It's sponsors like Aura that make it possible for me to put out videos as consistently as I do, and I want to start this off with a question. And the question is this: have you ever Googled yourself or somebody you loved and were surprised to see just how much of yours or their private information was available for you to find? Because when I tell you, it is far more common for your personal information to get out on the web for anyone to see. And that is because there are these things, these people, these companies out there called data brokers. And they are selling yours and mine and lots of people's, many people's private information to people that we really just do not want to have it, like spammers and robocallers. And they are making money off of this. They can even find out where you live. I am not down with that sickness. I value my privacy and I value your privacy, and that's why I want to introduce you to Aura. Now, did you know that data brokers are legally required to take your information off if you ask them to? They have to stop if you ask them to. But here's the thing. They make it super difficult for you to do that because, first thing, the hardest thing, I would say, arguably, the hardest thing is finding out which of those pesky data brokers have your information, and that is where Aura comes in. They figure out all the data brokers who have your information, and they submit opt-out requests on your behalf. They do the work so that you do not have to. When I first signed up for Aura, that's what I was most curious about. I went right to the data broker opt-out section, which if you go to their site, or when you go to their site, you can see it. And I was like, okay, how many could really have my information? And it turns out like 30, and Aura had already submitted opt-out requests on my behalf. Thank you, Aura. They also do things like see if your information's been leaked on the dark web, and nobody wants their information leaked on the dark web because that leads to all the problems, so many of all the problems. And they also see if your passwords are strong, like the ones you use for your banking. They check to see if those are secure. And Aura checked mine, and it turns out, even though I've had the same passwords for all of my things since 2007, I think that's right, I picked it right the first time. They're strong as heck, and I only know that thanks to Aura. And those are just a couple of things that Aura does to help keep you safe online from threats that you just honestly can't see. Through just the Aura app, which is super easy to set up, you can get things like parental controls, antivirus, VPN, password management, identity theft insurance, and more. And you get it all in one place. You don't need several different apps for all of these different services, and you get it at one affordable price. Now, it sounds like a great deal to me, but listen, I'm not your mom. I can't tell you what to do. But what I can tell you is that I don't want people to exploit and profit off of your personal information, and you don't have to let that happen. You can let Aura help you by keeping you safe online. And of course, I've got great news for you today. Aura is offering members of the Brat Pack the opportunity to explore all they have to offer for free for 2 weeks through my link. So if all of that sounds as good to you as it does to me, make sure to use my link to let them know I sent you. It's in the description box. It's aura.com/Bratterstein to get a 14-day free trial and see if your personal information is being leaked online. And if it is, let Aura help you put a stop to it today. Now, I just want to say a big thank you to Aura for sponsoring today's video. It's partners like Aura that make it possible for me to put out videos as consistently as I do. And a big thank you to you guys for always being so supportive of all of my sponsors. You rock. Don't ever change. Alright, now with all of that said, let's go ahead and get into this video. Now, this video is on a case that I stumbled upon while researching another case. And as soon as I started reading about what happened to Felicia, I was shocked because, well, for many reasons I was shocked because this is a horrifying case. But I was shocked that no one is talking about it because it's the type of case that truly needs more light shined on it. It needs more attention because the man who murdered Felicia is a very dangerous man who is on the run and has been on the run for at least a year at this point. And any woman who comes in contact with this man, I believe, is in danger, dude, because not only was this man researching how to be a serial killer, which is already horrifying. But when they went through his phone when they had him in custody, which they let him go, and we will get into that, when they went through his phone, he had images of what looked like at least 3 dead bodies in his phone. So today I'm going to tell you the entire story, at least what we know so far. Obviously, it's a new case. Somebody hasn't even been arrested or gone to trial, so there will be more. But I'm going to tell you what we know so far. I read all the things that are available so that you do not have to. And at the end of this video, I'm going to ask you the question of the day. I'm going to give it to you now so you can have it kicking around in your brain as we go through the details. But obviously, I want you to answer once we have something to go on. But the question of the day is this. Do you think that Felicia is her murderer's first victim, or do you think this man has killed before or since he's been on the run all this time? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below after we go through the details of this case. And now with all of that said, come gather around and let me tell you the story of the murder of Felicia Johnson. Now our story today begins on February 7th, 2023, and this was in Montgomery County, Texas. It was on this day that a TxDOT worker was walking through the Sam Houston National Forest near Flamingo Lakes and Highway 149 when he discovered what he believed to be skeletal remains inside of a trash bag. Police were called, cadaver dogs were brought out, and it didn't take long for them to determine that these remains that were found were in fact human. They were the upper torso, like a portion of the upper torso of a young woman. Pretty immediately, police had an idea of who these remains belonged to. Like, they were so confident that they knew who this was that before even testing DNA to confirm, they reached out to the family to let them know about the discovery. This is because a year earlier, a young woman named Felicia Johnson from San Diego had been visiting Houston. She had been there to celebrate her 24th birthday when she went missing. No one had seen her since, and her bloody cell phone and other items that belonged to her were found in this exact same forest. Now, let's talk a little bit about Felicia, and then we'll talk about what happened to her and who did this to her. Felicia Marie Johnson, who also went by the name Felicia Marie, at least like on social media and stuff, was the eldest of 3 children, at least 3 from her father Kevin's side of the family. I haven't seen anything from or about her mother. I know that her father Kevin remarried a woman named Myra, which would make her, Felicia's stepmother, but I haven't seen anything from or about Felicia's biological mother. But anyways, that's just to say that I don't know if she had more siblings. I just know from her father's side, she was the eldest of 3. And she was said to just be like a very sweet and loving person. She was said to have a kind heart, to be a beautiful person who brought a smile to the face of literally anyone who knew her. Just like her grandmother, her father's mom. Her father said that she was her grandmother's twin. Physically, personality-wise, she was like the same person. And from looking at his social media and seeing photos, I can definitely see at least where the physical part comes into play. They look so similar. Just, different eras, obviously. The styling was a bit different, but physically their faces were so similar. She lived, Felicia, she lived in San Diego, California, the same place where her family lived. That's where her father was. But at the time that she was killed, she was visiting Houston, Texas. She had just celebrated her 24th birthday and she wanted to keep the good times rolling. So she planned this trip to Houston specifically for a celebration for her 24th birthday. And she was super excited to go. She was getting all ready, going and getting her nails done, packing up, excited to have a fun time in a new city and just to celebrate her. It was her birthday. She was a young woman. 24 is like you're in that in-between stage. You're not quite in your 30s, but you're not quite 21 anymore. You have a couple of years under your belt of being more of an adult. And she was just excited to celebrate her and the future she had in store for her. The future that was tragically stolen from her on this trip that was meant to be just a good time. Now, how long Felicia had been in Houston before she went missing is something that hasn't been clarified, at least not something I was able to find. But what I was able to find was that the entire time she had been there, she had been in communication with those that loved her, her friends, her family. They had been talking the whole time. That was until the evening, or the night rather, of Friday the 15th. On that evening, her communication with those who knew her just stopped completely out of nowhere, and this was unusual for her. It was very unusual for her not to respond to calls, especially not to respond to texts, and not to be on social media, because she was the type of person that was on, all of the platforms. So when she just went completely silent with no explanation, people were immediately worried. They were so worried that she stopped communicating on Friday evening, and by Saturday, they were already looking into her cell phone and where, the last location had pinged. You know what I mean? They were trying to figure out where she had last been. Now at this time, Felicia's dad, Kevin, was in San Diego, though as soon as he found out that something was actually wrong, he immediately, hopped on a plane and made his way to Houston so that he could be there to try to search for his daughter. But when they were figuring out where her phone was, I can't say for sure who the person was that he sent to the last location of her cell phone, pinging, because again, there is not enough media coverage on this case to put a full picture together. But what I was able to find was that this was a family friend slash PI that the family had, hired or had helping them, that they sent to Felicia's last location to look at her phone, to see where her phone had been, rather. You know what I'm saying? I hope I'm saying this correctly. So the place that they went was Bear Creek Park, which was a forested area in Houston, which was just a few miles from where she was believed to have last been seen, which where she was actually last seen is something we're going to get into a little bit later. There's a little bit of confusion about that, but I will clarify. Anyways, once this family friend slash PI got to the location, which was at Bear Creek Pioneers Park near Highway 6 and Clay Road, they found something, and it definitely did not make them feel confident that Felicia was okay, because what they found was her cell phone just lying on the side of the road, covered in blood. With that information in mind, with her father knowing that her phone was found in that condition, he immediately jumped on a plane and flew from San Diego to Houston so that he could be there to search for his daughter, and he filed a missing persons report on her on April 16th, 2022, a report that he and her family do not believe was taken seriously enough. They believe that police really dug their feet into the ground right from the beginning, didn't want to do much, and said that Houston police really need to take these cases more seriously, especially when it's Black women who are missing. Now, the first place that people started searching was Bear Creek Park, obviously, because this was where Felicia's phone was found. But right away, it was pretty discouraging to think about this place being the place where you had to start searching, because it was an area that could get pretty foresty. The leader of the search group that was put into effect to try to find Felicia said that it got really thick in some areas and had different roads that went to different areas, and that there were just a lot of places where somebody could just pull up to without being seen and, dump something. He said that he and his search group had been searching kind of discreetly in the forest, not being clear about where exactly they were looking in case the person that was responsible for her disappearance was local and was following the case. They wanted to kind of keep people in the dark so that nobody would, go out of their way, I know, we know, right? So they were trying to be discreet about it. And he said, as far as theories when it came to what happened to Felicia, he said that he hoped that he was wrong. This was the leader of the search group, that he hoped that he was wrong, but that something in his gut made him feel like this was going to be one of those cases where she was just never found, which was super hard. It was super hard to consider and super hard for Felicia's family to hear. Her father, Kevin, said of his daughter's disappearance, and I quote, "I'm running off of pure faith and just not giving up on her, that we're going to get her back." He added that he won't rest a day until he had his daughter back with him. So they continued, and flyers with several photos of Felicia were posted all over Bear Creek Park so that anybody there knew who exactly they should be looking for. Felicia was described as being Black or Black Hispanic with a dark complexion, black hair, and brown eyes. She stood at about 5'4" and was about 150 pounds and had tattoos on her right shoulder that were roses and butterflies. And people were really out there looking for her. This man, his name was Quanell X. He was an advocate, I believe, that was helping the family, said of her disappearance, quote, "We want Felicia to know the community is looking for you. We are turning over every stone. We'll leave no door unlocked or unopened until we find where you are." In addition to all of the, personal volunteer groups that they had out there searching, they also had Texas EquiSearch out there searching the whole area near where Felicia's phone was found. The FBI even ended up coming in to help with the searches when it came to Felicia's case, but despite all of the searches they did in this area, the only thing they found was Felicia's purse. Or rather, the only thing that was reported that they found was Felicia's purse. Now, in addition to searching Bear Creek Park, police also wanted to speak to her friends, her family, those who knew her and loved her and had talked to her in the days leading up to her going missing, so they could kind of put a timeline together and see where else they should be looking. And in speaking to these people, it started to look kind of promising. they were able to put together that while in Houston, Felicia had decided that she wanted to try to make a little extra money. And so she went to an adult entertainment club called Cover Girls that was located on Houston's northwest side. And she reportedly went to this club to interview, got rejected, and then left. And they believed that she ordered an Uber, and while waiting for the Uber, someone from the club came out and offered her a ride, and that she hadn't been seen since. And this was huge, right? This is a very big lead, and this is what the family in the beginning believed happened. Her family and the activist Quanell X, who had been helping the family, believed that her disappearance was linked to this club, that this nightclub had something to do with what happened to Felicia, with her father even coming out and giving a statement where he said, quote, "I think she got caught up in one of those sex trafficking, human trafficking situations where they are snatching up these out-of-town girls and putting them to work. That's what I think happened to her. I don't have proof, but in my heart, I feel like the strip club had something to do with it." He said he just believed that she had fell into something that she just couldn't get out of. And this is because it wasn't only them. The PI that they had brought in believed that this happened to her. And so the PI and her family believed that she had been like abducted and was being held against her will. So thinking that she was taken and that she might be alive out there somewhere, and that she may be able to even, be watching TV, listening to the radio, might hear her. Her father made a statement to his daughter as like a way to speak to her, a way to let her know people were there and cared about her and were looking for her, a way to help keep her strong, where he said, quote, "Felicia, we miss you. All the families. You're in all our prayers. I'm trying to hold myself together and stay strong for the family and for you, and I won't rest a day in my life until I have you back. It's a tragedy that you've been caught up in this net of whatever they got going on out here, but we're working very, very hard to get you back. I love you. Everybody in the family loves you, and I wanted to let you know, just stay strong, and we're coming for you." He added that he just wanted someone out there, somebody to have a change of heart, have their guilt get to them, so that they would come forward and give them some information so that he could just bring his daughter home. They also came out and made a statement to the person that they believed had Felicia and told them, like, listen, this is a bad move on your part, bud, because we are never gonna stop hunting you. And they felt like they were the only people who were putting pressure on this person who may be out there holding Felicia, because they didn't feel like police were doing their job. They didn't feel like police were being proactive and doing what they needed to do to find her, because they weren't even the ones who found the bloody phone and knew where to start searching, right? They had gotten this PI who went out there and found the phone, and they turned it over to police. The police weren't even the ones who did this. Now, because they felt like they weren't getting what they needed from the Houston Police Department, 2 weeks after Felicia went missing, her family, her friends, people who didn't even know her but just cared, decided to gather outside of the, City Hall? Right? Yeah, outside of City Hall, in hopes to get the mayor's attention on what was happening and to get more eyes on Felicia's case. Her father was just frustrated, man. He had a lot of questions and didn't feel like he had a lot of answers. And he said that he knew that police either had or had the ability to get the surveillance footage from the nightclub where she had last been seen. And for whatever reason, they either weren't getting it or weren't telling him that he had it. And he said of his mission, quote, "My plea today is to the city of Houston and all their governmental entities to hear my heart and my plea." Now, I don't know how successful this was in getting, attention from the mayor, but I do know that all of their, attempts at getting eyes on Felicia's case did get the attention of the congresswoman. This was Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. And she came out and said that she hopes to God that Felicia is found safely, calling her a precious young woman who came to their area, their community, and said that Houston, right? Oh, Felicia's safety. And she said she hopes her involvement would get more Houstonians' attention on the case. And she added that she just wanted Felicia's family to know that she stood with them and that she too would not sleep until answers were found for Felicia's family and they figured out where she was and what happened to her. Now here's the thing. In the beginning, they thought there was only one real thing standing in their way. They believed that if they were able to get the surveillance footage from the Cover Girls nightclub, that they would be able to see something, be able to see somebody who might have taken her, be able to have any idea where to even begin. But there was a little bit of back and forth here because apparently, reportedly, the Cover Girls nightclub was working with police and did give police the surveillance footage, which I believe was just indoor surveillance footage. I don't think there were any cameras outside that caught anything, or they might not have had cameras outside at all. I think that was the case, that they only had indoor cameras and not outdoor cameras. But they were also saying in the beginning that they didn't even have a record that Felicia had ever been there. The hostess and the manager couldn't confirm ever seeing her there either, and there was paperwork ready for her to fill out and what was called a dancer package, which basically, like, if a girl was to get hired, they would sign this and basically just go right to work. But Felicia never signed hers, with the club's attorney saying, quote, "She asked for a job, was respectfully declined, turned around, and left," which truly seems to contradict the idea that they had no proof that she had even been there, right? It was so confusing in the beginning, so I could see why this was so frustrating and confusing for her family. Felicia's family seemed to think that the club was not cooperating with the police, but apparently they had been, like, right from the beginning. And I think what it boils down to is a lack of communication and transparency between the police and Felicia's family. Because, like, in the beginning of the investigation, they were keeping things quiet. They were keeping things close to the chest or the vest, whatever the saying is, and they weren't telling the family what they knew. But it turns out that the club was never, like, trying to not work with the police. Apparently the attorney for the club said that the day that the police asked for the surveillance footage is the same day that they got it. So there's that. And what's really frustrating about this is that it turns out that none of this back and forth, this bullshit in the beginning of the case, which is the most important part of the case, none of it mattered. Because though this is where Felicia said she was going, this is where her family believed she had last been, through investigating, as investigators do, they were able to determine that the Cover Girls nightclub on the 15th was not even the last place or time that Felicia had been seen. Whether or not she got a ride from somebody at the club back to her hotel was irrelevant, because she made it back to her hotel regardless. This was a hotel rather in the Houston Medical Center, and that's where she was last seen at about 3 a.m. on the 16th. So from there, investigators were able to follow her movements, to track her movements, to see what she had been doing, who she had been talking to, and who she was actually last with that night. So they were able to determine that Felicia had been talking to a man on Snapchat, and this was, Lord help me, 28-year-old Chukwubuka Nobado. So he's Nigerian. The name is Nigerian, and I did reach out to one of you. You know who you are. Shout out to you. I don't know if you want your name out there in the internet, so I will just say props to you on helping me try to get this pronunciation, but Lord knows I am still butchering it. So from here on out, I'm going to try to avoid calling him by his whole name, to avoid all that unpleasantness that we just experienced, because Lord knows I'm just embarrassing myself. So let's just say that she, Felicia, and Chuck, this man, were speaking on Snapchat after he responded to an advertisement that he saw that Felicia posted. Apparently, police found advertisements on various websites, including a website called Skip the Game, and these were dedicated to sex work that had Felicia's photo, and, you know, like, it was her advertisement. And reportedly, this guy saw her and reached out to her, and eventually the two agreed to meet in person for $500, which I personally think this fact, the fact that Felicia was engaging in sex work, combined with the fact that she was a black woman, is the answer to the question, why is this case not getting more attention? Because I'm just going to say that now. The details that we're going to go through with this case, the details about this man, there's absolutely no excuse for this case not being elevated and for people not knowing about it. But yet, here we fucking find ourselves. And historically, we've seen time and time again that black women get less media attention, and so do sex workers. Their cases get less media attention, and that is a fucking shame. Because she, Felicia, was a 24-year-old girl, a daughter, a sister, a girl who deserved to live, who was just trying to celebrate her birthday when she was murdered, and the whole thing just really pisses me off. But anyways, police were able to determine through their investigating tactics that Felicia took an Uber ride. Now, this Uber was ordered by Chuk or Chuck, whatever we're going to call him, we're going to call him both of those things. He ordered the Uber to pick her up at her hotel and to drive her to an apartment complex that was located in the 3200 block of Wind Chase Boulevard, which is actually an apartment he used to live at but had recently moved out of. He met her at this apartment, picked her up, and took her to his new apartment, which was located on the 14,900 block of South Richmond Avenue. An hour later, his vehicle is seen leaving the same apartment complex, and at about 5:15 a.m., that's when Felicia's phone pinged to a cell tower near Bear Creek Park, which was where her phone was later found. And police believe at that time he left and he was disposing of Felicia's items, her cell phone, and then later her purse was found there. And they believe that that night he murdered her and got rid of her items, but he got rid of her body a few days later. And you know, it was after that, after meeting up with Chuk, that she just fell off the map. There was no cell phone activity, no social media, which makes sense because he had dumped her cell phone in the forest, and there was no credit card activity, nothing. It's like she just fell off the face of the earth after getting in a car with him. And there were signs of a struggle because the morning after he, picked Felicia up, and after he disposed of her phone, they were able to recover surveillance footage that showed him with a bandage wrapped around his right hand. They were able to watch him with this bandaged hand shopping at Walmart and at Home Depot, purchasing trash bags, a flashlight, a handheld, and a power saw, and towels. And he made these purchases on both the 16th and the 17th. And they were able to determine that he had went to a local clinic to get medical attention for this hand. That's why it was bandaged. And he said that he had cut his hand while opening boxes. So they had all that. They had him being with her. They had him purchasing the weird supplies. They also had him pulling out money. But then they get into his cell phone searches, his online searches, and that's when it gets honestly really scary. He made so many incriminating searches, like, for example, how to permanently delete your search history. Can police search the phone records of a missing person? Can police unlock a phone during an investigation? Most forested part of Houston. Can bleach destroy DNA? What does bleach do to blood? What does vinegar do to blood? Does vinegar destroy blood DNA? How to get away with murder? How to kill without getting caught? And how to be a serial killer. What comes up when you search that? You know what I mean? I'm half curious. No, I'm very curious. I want to search it and know, but I also don't want to be on a list out there. He also Googled Houston escorts, which is pretty terrifying considering we know what he was searching Houston escorts for previously when he picked up Felicia. And he also searched for what was it? The 15 cheapest places to live in the country for $1,000. So he was clearly planning to leave. But despite this, police had an opportunity to take him into custody, and they didn't, and I do not know why. So clearly, I didn't mention this yet, but when all of this information is coming out, they switched Felicia's case from a missing persons case to a criminal investigation, because though they didn't have her body, they believed that she was dead, and this was very hard. This was very hard for her father to know and to process, and he said of this quote, "I can't put it into words. I'm trying to hold myself together and not break down. I don't know where my baby is or what's been done to her." And the person responsible wasn't in custody, but he would be, right? At least for a time. On May 13th, so this would have been 2022, by the way. So this would have been about a month after Felicia went missing. Police actually did get a search warrant for Chuk's car and his apartment. After getting this warrant, they actually did pull Chuk over and took him into custody to be questioned after pulling him over during a traffic stop, which I assume they had a bolo out for his car. They saw it, they pulled him over, they bring him in for questioning. What they asked is not clear, but we do know that they searched his car at this time, and they found a lot of very, very concerning things. Inside his car, which was a Honda Accord, they found a 9mm handgun, receipts for items that could have been used in a cleanup after a murder, many loose latex gloves, a large kitchen knife, a shovel, etc., etc. And there were also reports that there was blood in the back seat and the trunk of his car. Okay, but I only saw the blood thing reported in one news outlet. Everything else, the gun, the knife, the shovel, all of that being in his car was reported everywhere. But the blood thing I only saw reported once, so kind of take that with a grain of salt. But the other stuff is damning enough, I would say. But despite this, despite all of that being in his car and a girl being missing that he had been with, he was released. They took him and they questioned him and they let him go, and I do not get it. I do not get it. Now, reportedly, police spoke to Law and Crime, and they told Law and Crime, which is like, I think we all know what Law and Crime is, so whatever. They told Law and Crime that all they had against him was a pocket warrant, and that's why they couldn't arrest him, that they didn't have enough to bring up charges against him. So he was just detained, questioned, and released. But not before the cell phone that was in like his front pocket was taken. So he was released, but they kept his cell phone so that they could search that. Which we're going to get into that phone in just a second, but first I want to talk about the fact that they had a warrant to search his house, right? As I said, they got a warrant to search his house and to search his car. But this was a house he was not going to be returning to, because once he was released after that traffic stop, he dipped. He was gone in the wind. But they were searching his house, and now they were going to find even more evidence. They found, quote, apparent blood stains in the home, especially large amounts on the bedroom floor and in the hallway, and this blood was a, quote, strong match for Felicia. So now the phone. The phone that they took from him while they had him in custody. Now, did they look at the phone and at the photos inside the phone while they had him in custody? I don't know. But I'd like to say they did not. Because if they did, I can't imagine that they would have let him leave. Or at least I'd like to think that they wouldn't have seen these photos and then let him leave. Inside his phone, they found photos of dead bodies. They found at least one photo of a dismembered female. Now, it wasn't confirmed that this female was Felicia, but based on how her remains were recovered a year later, I would say that it may have been Felicia. And they also found photos of 3 more dead bodies. Now, these photos, they weren't able to find any information from these photos. There wasn't like metadata associated with these photos. So as far as I know, these people have not been identified, right? They don't know who these people are, or if they do know, they haven't reported it. Isn't that just insane though, dude? They let him go. They had him and they let him go. And I just don't understand it, especially considering not only did they have the stuff in his car, they have the stuff in his house, they have the stuff in his phone. Maybe they didn't have it all at the same time. Maybe this could have been coordinated better. But he also had a record, kinda. Chuk was previously looked into for a sexual assault case after a woman went to the police and said that he had tried to rape her in his vehicle. She told police that she was able to get out. She was able to get away, and she was able to make a run for it after, I guess, he had chased her and he had got her, but she was able to get away. Now, the problem is that she ended up later not wanting to cooperate with police. She said that what she said before wasn't true, that she hadn't been assaulted and there was no violence against her, and said that she didn't want to press charges and she just wanted to go home. Which is honestly, it's just sad. It's just very sad. Anyways, once police realized their mistake in letting him go, they quickly filed charges against him. I believe this was in June of 2022. They filed charges against him in relation to Felicia's murder, like they charged him with her murder, and they also filed charges against him related to tampering with evidence after the fact. And it was just so sad because though this is a step in the right direction, prior to this at least, Felicia's family was able to hold out hope, right? They were able to have some little bit of them that believed that she might be out there and might be okay. But now that charges were being filed, it was kind of bringing it all into focus that she was not okay, that they believed that she was dead, and that was incredibly hard to deal with. And the advocate for the family, Quanell X, came out with a statement saying that Felicia's case really is just like a cautionary tale for all young women about how quickly their lives can just be stolen from them. And he made a statement specifically where he said, quote, "This is painful. We are sick and tired of these young girls coming up missing and being found murdered by sick-minded individuals who think they can get away with it because these are soft targets and young girls and young women of color, and they think that nobody will care." But people did care, and a reward was quickly put together for any information that would lead to Chuk's arrest, because though he was charged, he was in the wind, and they were hoping and are still hoping that the $5,000 they were able to put together would bring somebody to want to come forward and tell them something, like anything. especially because he could still be in the area because he was local, right? He grew up there. Like, he had a Nigerian name. He is a Nigerian man, but he grew up in Houston, went to school in the Fort Bend County area, and worked in the area. So they're like, somebody must know something. It's not like this guy just like was a drifter. Like, he had roots here. And going back to people caring about Felicia, that the reward was issued because people really cared about her. There were also vigils held in her honor, both in San Diego, where she was from, and at the park where her phone was recovered after she went missing. People prayed and talked about what a wonderful person she was, saying that she was witty and smart and funny and able to crack a joke in 2.5 seconds. And they said that she was just so much more than just a pretty face. People also talked about just how shocked they were that this could have happened in the first place. Like, for example, friends who had heard she was missing heard about it on social media and just like didn't believe it was true flat out. They were like, okay, they can't find her, they can't get a hold of her, her phone must have died, like something must have happened. They were trying to rationalize a totally irrational situation. Especially because so many of them, because it had just been her birthday, so many people had just talked to her. And now she was just gone, and this was an incredibly difficult thing to try to comprehend. And on top of all of that, most of her friends, almost all of her friends, live in California. So there's this sense of like hopelessness with you being so far from where she went missing. But these vigils and these prayers, all of this was meant to sort of inspire hope in those who loved her. You know, to bring everyone together and just bring some peace to these people in a totally unpredictable time. Felicia's aunt said that just the response that her and her family have received and all the people that have come forward and have spoken for her and have talked about her has just been astounding. And she said specifically, quote, "It will mean the world to me, especially to know that not only we love her, but her friends and other people that know of her love her and just want her to come home to us and be safe." But sadly, she would not come home safe. We know that now because we're talking about this. But her family would go with such uncertainty for like almost a year, dude. They would not know for sure that she was gone for almost a year. Because remember, she went missing in April of 2022. But it wasn't until February of 2023, so almost an entire year, when that text dot worker was going around doing what they do, whatever that job is. I don't know what that is. I don't know what text dot is, but they were doing their job when they found those skeletal remains in the Sam Houston National Forest. And of course, initially they couldn't be sure that these remains did belong to Felicia, but considering the area that they were in and how decomposed they were pretty sure that this was her. Like, so clear that it was her that they actually reached out to Felicia's family and told them about the discovery. And though they couldn't be sure that it was her, I mean, she had been out in the elements for so long, and it had been like a year, and it was going to be a chore to identify her, and it was going to take time. Her father, as soon as he heard about the discovery, he was pretty certain it was his daughter. He said that just like where she was found and the fact that they actually went through the trouble of contacting him, he's like, why would they do this if they weren't like pretty effing positive that this was her? And on top of that, there was some jewelry on the body that matched jewelry that Felicia was known to own. So they were all pretty sure that it was her, but of course they'd have to wait for dental and DNA to have a positive identification. But even though it was very, very sad, it was still something seen as sort of a positive for her family. Her father called this a blessing and a score. Like the body being found a blessing and a score, because at least now he could bring her home and give her the burial that she deserved. Now, this whole situation, this whole body being found in the forest thing was very shocking for locals, because though this was like a forested area, it's not like it was an abandoned area. Emergency vehicles, unmarked and marked cars, and crime scene tape let the locals know that something serious was going on. And once they found out just what it was, they were like shit. Like one lady, for example, who had lived on the edge of the forest for like a very long time, said that it was just a lot to process because she knew that things were dumped there. She saw people dump trash there all the time, but that it had been like decades since she heard anything about a body being left in the forest. And not just any body, right? It was a body that appeared to be or was described as deconstructed. A justice of the peace named Judge Wayne Mack spoke to Law and Crime and told them that it was just portions of a woman's body that was found, right? And though it had been so long that like a manner of death couldn't be conclusively determined, they were treating it as a homicide, right? And considering we know that there were photos of a dismembered woman found in Shouk's phone, I wonder if that dismembered woman was Felicia, and that's why they only found parts of her body in the forest. Though it is also possible that like she was put out there whole and taken apart by animals. We hear about that happening a lot. We'll have to wait until more information comes out to see if like the bag was intact and she was just partially there in an intact bag or what, but it's a horrifying thought. The judge also offered his thoughts and prayers to Felicia's family, saying that he hoped that like this brought some closure to them, because this would be like the worst case scenario if this body was confirmed to be that of Felicia. And of course it was, right? Because within no time, the Houston police came out and made a statement where they basically said that with heavy hearts, they were here to announce that the body that had been found in the forest was that of the San Diego woman, Felicia Johnson, who disappeared a year earlier. And in receiving this news, Felicia's father made a statement in which he said, quote, "The reason why her body has been found is so that she can return to get justice for herself. This is the first piece of the puzzle that is going to allow law enforcement to do their job and bring these guys to justice." He came out and said that the last year, like these several months that he was waiting to get answers about what happened to his daughter, were a real roller coaster of emotions, but that he and his family would not rest until they got justice for Felicia. He and his wife, Felicia's stepmother, Myra, gave a statement over Zoom because they were back in San Diego by this time. And he said that he truly could die hearing about what happened to his daughter and what she went through. He said that as a father, it's very difficult to know that he's never going to see or talk to his daughter again. But he did say that he was thankful that in one way or another he was bringing his daughter home and that he was going to lay her to rest. And he said that this was huge and this was a type of closure that not every family gets. He said that he's been going through it though. He said he's been dealing with depression, PTSD, anxiety, hypertension, high blood pressure. He said you name it, he's dealing with it. But he said he can't sleep and he can't stop until his daughter's murderer is found. But he said it's especially hard because his daughter's killer is on the run, and Kevin believes that this man who was looking up how to be a serial killer, this very dangerous man, may have killed again. But he also said something that was chilling and darkly poetic when he said that his daughter being found the way she was her, quote, "popping back from the grave for her revenge, for her justice. That's what that is," end quote. And he also added that now everything was going to come to the surface. And I hope that he is right, because right now that's where we're at. Felicia has been murdered. Her murderer is just out there on the run, and that is terrifying. And that has to be just so hard for her family. They're struggling to come to terms with this, to know that this man is just out there and trying to do whatever they can to make something positive out of literally the shittiest situation they could ever be in. And when I say there's talk of them trying to do something positive with such a shitty situation, I know that they were talking about trying to start a foundation in Felicia's honor that helps women who have been lured into sex trafficking, because they believe that Felicia was. I mean, anyone can be a victim of sex trafficking, and it doesn't look the way people imagine it does. It doesn't look like it is in the movies, like in the movie Taken, for example, right? It's more discreet than that a lot of the times. It's more discreet than that most of the time. Kathy Griffin, who is a human trafficking victim services director for Harris County, said that she would estimate that there are anywhere from 70,000 to 80,000 sex industry workers daily just in her county, and said that any one of them could be a victim to a villain. She added that this situation is so dangerous, and it's the type of situation that every single media outlet should be screaming about from the rooftops, that this is something that needs to be discussed, and I agree. Cases like this are so common, and for whatever reason, people just care seem to care less. You know what I mean? Like, they seem to care less, and it breaks my heart because somehow a person's line of work makes them less worthy of being alive or less worthy of somebody's compassion when they're murdered. When a 24-year-old girl is murdered while she's out celebrating her birthday because she engaged in sex work, that makes her less worthy of people caring. That just breaks my heart. It doesn't make Felicia matter less, and definitely not to her family. On Felicia's family's GoFundMe page, which I am going to link down below, so if anybody has the means or has it on their heart to want to donate and help this family, you can. If I forget to link it, please tell me, because sometimes I do, just because I have a baby and sometimes he wakes up at 4 a.m. and I'm tired, but let me know if I forget to link it. But her father said on this GoFundMe page, quote, "My baby girl was beautiful, kind, and a loving soul who brought joy to everyone she met. She had a bright future ahead of her, and her life was cut tragically short. Lord knows, words cannot express the depth of my grief and the loss that I feel." And that's the reality. That this monster murdering Felicia, not her job, not anything she did, but this monster taking it upon himself to murder this 24-year-old girl, leaves her family, her father, those who love her, with unimaginable loss and grief. And with that, my friends, is the story of the horrible murder of Felicia Johnson. I hope you found my telling to be informative. Like, I hope I gave you every bit of information you would want when looking into this case. And of course, I just want to thank you for hanging out and remembering Felicia with me today. Now, considering everything I told you throughout this video, I want to revisit the question of the day that I asked you in the beginning, and that was this. Do you believe that Felicia was Chuck's, this asshole's first murder victim? Or do you believe that he killed people before her? And do you believe he's killed people since? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. I don't know. I think it definitely seems likely that he's killed somebody before, because why else would he have those photos in his phone? But anyways, guys, before you leave, please don't forget to leave me a comment down below with any case you'd like to see me cover in the future. As you know, I have a long list of cases, but whenever you leave a suggestion, I put it on my list, so if I cover it, I can give you a shout out. I love looking into the cases you guys suggest, because they're often cases I haven't heard of, or cases that need more coverage, and I know you're filled with great ideas and great taste, otherwise you would not be here. If you haven't already, please don't forget to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing the bell. I put out a new video every single week, sometimes 2 a week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you specifically you, but I can only do that if you join the Brat Pack and become one of us. One of us. One of us. One of us. And if you want to hang out more consistently, all my social media is listed down below, along with a link to my membership and a link to my merch store. And now, with all of that said, I just want to thank you for being here when you could literally be anywhere else in the world. That is tight. You are tight. Please stay safe and be a better person than you were yesterday, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.